Hi, my name's Katharine Jenkins. I'm an assistant professor in the philosophy department at the University of Nottingham, and at the moment I'm taking part in 14 days of strike action with UCU. This is what I told my students about why I'm striking. The strike is about pensions, falling pay, gender, BAME and disability pay gaps, casualisation and workload. What I think is really important for students to understand is that this strike isn't only about pensions and pay, it's about workers demanding fair, sustainable working conditions without discrimination, without precarious, zero-hours contracts, and without punishing workloads that threaten our mental and physical health. What we're asking for is working conditions that let us teach the way we want to teach. And because of that, this strike is just as much about students as it is about staff, because our working conditions are also your learning conditions. As an educator, I feel I have a responsibility to my current students to do the absolute best that I can for them. But I also have a responsibility to future students to protect the conditions for their learning as well. And that's a big part of why I'm striking. Another thing that I think I have is obligations as a political individual more broadly, and that's actually also relevant to this strike, because I believe this strike is necessary in order to protect higher education from marketisation and ultimately destruction. So one of the first really political things I ever did was to take part in a student occupation in protest against the trebling of tuition fees to £9,000 when I was an undergraduate. Well, we lost that fight, and I think ever since things have continued to go from bad to worse in universities, both for students and for staff. So it's recently been in the news that the government is considering plans to assess courses based on the earnings of graduates over the 10 years after they graduate. I think that's a really narrow way to assess the value of a course, and I think it's likely to work out particularly poorly for humanities subjects. So in my opinion, this kind of move and the working conditions that staff are facing and the fees that students are having to pay, I think they're all part of a classic tactic, which is to place a service or something like that under so much pressure that it kind of starts to break, and then to pretend that it never worked in the first place and wasn't really worth having, so that finally you can claim that you're doing everyone a favour by either privatising it or getting rid of it altogether. I think this is happening with the welfare state. I think it's happening with the NHS, and I don't want to see it happen with universities as well. On the same day that I read about that in the news, I also read about some other stories. I read about Graham Linehan going on Newsnight and directly comparing health provision for trans youth to Nazi experiments on children. I read about the Home Office chartered deportation flight that left for Jamaica, carrying people who've only ever known Britain as home. I read about the desperate and dangerous conditions in the refugee camps on Lesbos, and about the devastation caused by fires in Australia. That's just the news that I happened to see on one single day. So, LGBT rights, citizenship, the refugee crisis, the climate crisis, the solutions to all of these, I believe, involve philosophical questions. What do we owe to each other? And how do we create the kind of social, political, and economic structures that let us even begin to discharge those obligations? I genuinely believe in the power of philosophy and other humanities subjects to help arrest the slide into authoritarianism, violence, and destruction that we're seeing right now. And I also genuinely believe in the power of younger generations to put right what your forebears have so spectacularly messed up. And that's why I think higher education in general, and humanities courses in particular, are so important in this political moment and so worth defending. And so this strike for me is it's a small part, but it's part of that defence. And I hope it will build into something much, much bigger, and I invite all of you to get involved.